messed with my chocolate. I messed with his life. The little square box sat on my desk, a beacon of sanity in the open-plan hellscape. Compartments held individually wrapped squares of Amano artisan chocolate, a rotating selection of their single-origin bars. Each one was a tiny, meticulously crafted escape, a micro-vacation for my brain. I rationed them carefully, one square around 2 p.m. to stave off the afternoon slump, another if a particularly brutal spreadsheet crossed my path. It wasn't an addiction, exactly. Precision engineering for my mood. Greg, on the other hand, was a blunt instrument, a sales executive with a booming laugh, a backslapping demeanor, and a complete disregard for personal boundaries. He was the kind of guy who wore too much cologne and called everyone buddy, even when he clearly didn't remember their name. He was also, apparently, a chocolate thief. It started subtly. One day, I reached for my 2 p.m. fix and found a compartment empty. I figured I'd miscounted. The next day, another gone. Then, a handwritten note appeared, tucked under the box. Enjoyed the dark chocolate, Greg. Annoyance curdled in my stomach. It wasn't the cost, though Amano wasn't cheap. It was the principle. My space, my routine, violated. I found Greg by the water cooler, surrounded by his usual gaggle of sycophants. "Hey, Greg," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "About the chocolate." He threw his head back and laughed, a sound that echoed through the entire office. "Oh, that. Yeah, that stuff's good. Figured you wouldn't mind sharing, right? Sharing is caring." He winked, then turned back to his conversation, completely dismissing me. I seethed. Sharing is caring? I'd rather share a root canal. I went to Mr. Thompson in HR, hoping for some kind of intervention. I explained the situation, carefully emphasizing that it was disrupting my work and creating a hostile environment. Mr. Thompson listened with a practiced air of concern, nodding occasionally. "Well, Anna," he said, when I finished, "I understand your frustration, but Greg is a valuable asset to the company. He brings in a lot of revenue. We need to be careful about creating unnecessary conflict." He suggested I label my chocolate box more clearly. Maybe even put it in the communal fridge. The communal fridge. A biological wasteland where forgotten lunches went to die. That was his solution? I walked back to my desk, feeling defeated. Sarah, my friend from the design team, saw my face. "What's wrong?" I told her the whole story, the chocolate, the note, Mr. Thompson's dismissive response. Sarah's eyes narrowed. "That's not okay, Anna. He's deliberately harassing you. You can't let him get away with that." "What am I supposed to do?" I asked, feeling helpless. "He's practically untouchable." "Fight back," Sarah said, a glint in her eye. "But be smart about it. Don't let him see you coming." That night, I started a spreadsheet. Not a work spreadsheet, a Greg spreadsheet. I listed every incident, every stolen chocolate, every dismissive comment. I started paying closer attention to his behavior, his interactions, his expenses. I was a data analyst. Finding patterns was what I did. The next week, my Amano box arrived. I made a show of carefully placing it on my desk, right where Greg could see it. The anticipation was almost unbearable. Sure enough, the next day, another chocolate was missing. But this time, there was no note. Just an empty compartment. I smiled. The game was on. I started small. I changed his computer background to a picture of Nicolas Cage. I swapped out his favorite coffee mug with one that said "World's Okayest Boss." Harmless stuff, but it felt good. A tiny release of pent-up frustration. But it wasn't enough. Greg continued to steal my chocolates, and his behavior escalated. He started making snide comments about my work, questioning my competence in meetings. He even replaced my Amano squares with individually wrapped Hershey's Kisses. The ultimate insult. I knew I had to step up my game. I needed information. I needed leverage. That's when I started talking to David from IT. David was quiet, awkward, and perpetually covered in crumbs. He was also the only person in the company who seemed genuinely uninterested in office politics. I started by asking him for help with a minor technical issue, then gradually steered the conversation towards Greg. I mentioned some discrepancies I'd noticed in the sales reports, nothing specific, just enough to pique his interest. David was hesitant at first, but I played on his sense of justice. I explained how Greg was making my work life miserable, how HR wasn't doing anything to help. Slowly, he started to open up. He admitted that he'd heard rumors about Greg's less than ethical sales practices. One afternoon, David approached my desk, looking nervous. "I might have found something," he whispered, handing me a flash drive. "But you didn't get it from me, okay?" I plugged the flash drive into my computer and opened the file. It was a collection of internal emails, expense reports, and sales data. As I scrolled through the documents, my jaw dropped. Greg wasn't just a chocolate thief. He was a fraud. He was inflating sales figures, falsifying expense reports, and even skimming money from company accounts. I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. This was the leverage I needed. But I also felt a pang of guilt. Was I going too far? Was this just about the chocolate anymore? I pushed the guilt aside. Greg had made my life a living hell. He had stolen my peace of mind, my sense of security. He deserved whatever was coming to him. I spent the next few days meticulously organizing the data, creating a detailed report outlining Greg's fraudulent activities. I consulted with Emily from the legal department over several lunches, using very vague scenarios. She guided me, unknowingly, in compiling my evidence and ensuring it was airtight. I knew I couldn't just hand the report over to HR. Mr. Thompson would bury it, protect Greg, and I'd be the one who ended up getting punished for snooping around. I needed to find a way to expose Greg without implicating myself. That's when I decided to go anonymous. I created a burner email account and drafted a message to the CEO, Mr. Thompson, and the entire sales team. I laid out Greg's crimes in excruciating detail, attaching the report and all the supporting documentation. I hit send on a Friday afternoon, just before leaving for the weekend. The anticipation was agonizing. I spent the entire weekend on edge, wondering what would happen on Monday morning. When I walked into the office on Monday, the atmosphere was electric. People were whispering, huddled in groups, staring at Greg. Mr. Thompson was pacing back and forth, looking flustered. Greg was nowhere to be seen. The rumors started flying. Greg had been suspended. The company was launching an internal investigation. The FBI was involved. Okay, maybe not the FBI. Mr. Thompson summoned me to his office. He looked pale and shaken. "Anna," he said, his voice strained. "Do you know anything about this email?" I put on my best innocent face. "What email, Mr. Thompson?" He showed me a printed copy of the anonymous message. "This. Someone has accused Greg of serious financial misconduct. Do you have any information that could help us with our investigation?" I hesitated for a moment, then feigned concern. "Well, I did notice some discrepancies in the sales reports a while back, but I just assumed it was a mistake." I carefully avoided mentioning my conversations with David or my access to the internal data. "Mr. Dr. Thompson grilled me for an hour, but I stuck to my story. I was just a concerned employee who had stumbled upon some suspicious information. I had no idea who sent the email, and I certainly had no personal vendetta against Greg. The investigation dragged on for weeks. Greg denied everything, of course, but the evidence was overwhelming. He had been caught red-handed. Finally, the inevitable happened. Greg was fired. His reputation was ruined. He faced potential legal charges. I watched it all unfold from the sidelines, a silent observer of the chaos I had unleashed. Part of me felt a sense of triumph. Greg had gotten what he deserved. He had messed with my chocolate, and I had messed with his life. But another part of me felt uneasy. I had gone to extreme lengths to get my revenge. I had manipulated people, lied to my superiors, and potentially broken the law by accessing confidential data. Sarah and David were both impressed by my boldness, but they were also worried. "Are you sure you did the right thing, Anna?" Sarah asked me one day. "I don't know," I said honestly, but I couldn't just let him get away with it. Things at work were different now. People treated me with a mixture of admiration and suspicion. Some saw me as a hero, a whistleblower who had exposed a corrupt executive. Others saw me as a troublemaker, someone who couldn't be trusted. David kept his distance, afraid of being implicated in the scandal. Our little alliance had crumbled under the weight of my actions. Even Mr. Thompson treated me differently. He was polite, but there was a wariness in his eyes. He knew that I was capable of anything, A few weeks after Greg's firing, a package arrived at my desk. It was a new box of Amano Artisan chocolate, a custom assortment of my favorite flavors. There was no note, no indication of who had sent it. I carefully opened the box and took out a square of Madagascar chocolate, the one with the subtle notes of citrus and spice. I closed my eyes and savored the flavor, trying to recapture the sense of peace and contentment it used to bring me. But this time, it didn't work. The chocolate tasted bittersweet, tainted by the knowledge of what I had done. The victory felt hollow, the revenge incomplete. I was no longer the same person I had been before. Greg had stolen more than just my chocolate. He had stolen my innocence. I looked around the open plan office at the faces of my coworkers, each one a potential ally or enemy. I knew that I had changed the game, that I had crossed a line. I was now a player, whether I wanted to be or not. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was just the beginning. The game had just begun.